Hey there, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com, and in this week's video, I want to talk to you about the power of the subgroup. Now, if you've been mixing for any length of time, then you probably already know how cool subgroups can be. But this is something I've started doing just recently, a little small change to it that is actually, I don't know if it's changed the way my mixes sound as much as it's changed my workflow, and I'm actually just enjoying it a little bit better and feel like I'm mixing faster because of it. So I'm going to show you what I've done here. Now, if you don't know what a subgroup is, let me explain that in 30 seconds. A subgroup is simply when you take a bunch of tracks and you route them to a single fader. So, for example, over here, you'll see this fader is labeled drums, and over here in blue, all of these tracks are my drum tracks. So I've actually just routed those, to this drum fader. So if I solo that fader, listen to what I hear. Right, so I hear drums by themselves. So what I've done is, instead of, the way I used to mix is I would only subgroup things I felt really needed it, like drums, if there was a bunch of guitars, a bunch of vocals, and then the rest I would have feeding just the main output. But I've actually stopped doing that, and I've started actually routing everything through a subgroup. So let me show you real quickly what I got going on in this session. It's a fairly, that was cool. It's a fairly small session, not huge, but not small. Full drums, about 5 guitar tracks, a couple of synth and keyboard tracks, bass, and a lot of vocals. So what I've done is I've just routed everything through buses. You can see it a little better if we look at it from this screen, and this is again in Studio One, but all my buses are these darker tracks. So you'll see I've got a couple of lead vocals, a lead vocal and a double are routed to my vocal subgroup. Let me zoom in so you can see it. Drums are going to the drum subgroup. That includes tambourine. Bass is going to the bass subgroup. Now you may think that's stupid because it's just one bass track, and you might be correct. However, a lot of times in a mix, I'll end up duplicating that bass track to add distortion or to take it up or down an octave or to do something to it. And so if I do that, if I go ahead and route this to the subgroup now, when I duplicate that, it'll all be going to a subgroup as I'm going to need it to anyway in the future. If not, no big deal. Doesn't really hurt either way. All my guitars are going through the electric bus. These are all electric guitars. Synth and strings are going to the keys bus, and then all these other harmonies and vocals are going to a BGV, or background vocal bus. And if there's a bunch of random instruments that don't really belong to their own bus, you can have a miscellaneous bus. So if there's like a single acoustic guitar track and then a harp and then some sort of a weird sound effect, you don't want a bus for each of those. That gets a little repetitive. You can send all of those to their own bus. And you can do nothing to the bus if you want to. Okay, so how does this work? Why is there power in the subgroup? Well, first of all, there's only, 7 faders over here for my entire mix. So yes, I need to balance the drums going into the drum bus and the guitars going into the guitar bus. But then when I want to come in and adjust the overall level and the tone of these individual groups of instruments, I can do it really easily. So the way I'll usually set up the view is this way. I'll expand out, I'll leave all the other tracks narrow, and I'll expand out my buses. And so now, if I want to start mixing, I can come over here, turn down all those buses there, and if I hit play, you'll hear nothing. And then I can just turn up the ones that I need. So let's start with drums. Bring in bass. So as you can see, I can very quickly get together a rough mix, and then I can also affect these groups themselves. So I can come in and I can compress and EQ the overall drum bus first and get it sounding as close to how I want it to sound here, and then I can go back and do some effects on the individual kick and snare drum and things like that. I love working that way because it makes me do less. If I can get the great sound at the bus, then I don't do anything earlier up the stream on the individual channels if I don't have to. And it also allows me to quickly mix and quickly adjust things. So if I'm in the middle of a mix and I want to know how much is that bass adding to this mix, or let's say the electric guitars. So we're listening, and right there we can go ahead and mute the electrics and hear what's missing or what it's adding or what it's taking away. And then I can actually EQ the entire electric guitar bus. So if the guitars and the vocals are interfering, I can do a very general EQ on the electrics and on the vocal buses that keeps them out of each other's hair. And that's so much easier than going in EQ 6 individual guitar tracks and try to get those to sit nicely with the vocal. Why not do the entire bus? So hopefully that's got the wheels in your head spinning as to the different all the possibilities you have by using subgroups. And I hope you'll try it on your next mix. I think you'll like it. Thanks again for listening. And just as a side note, this is a track from the lovely, he hates it when I call him that, the lovely Graham Cochran. And this is actually the song we're mixing next month, the month of July 2013, for Dueling Mixes. So if you don't know what Dueling Mixes is, you should check it out. It's over at duelingmixes.com. Otherwise, see you in next week's video.